Hello, viewers. I'm Vibhuti Jha. This is Jaipur Dialogue USA. And as always, I welcome you to the show. Please like, subscribe, and share our channel. Give your feedback. We learn from it. The US elections are just over. Mr. Donald Trump is back as a designated president of America when he takes oath on January 20th, and a new era has begun. I believe in a very spiritual and serious way. This is indeed the reincarnation of Donald Trump, and he has brought about a resurgence of his own policies and his own agenda with a massive mandate that he has won. Perhaps one of the most unnoticed item in this victory is that he also has Senate as Republican majority. What it means is that unlike 2016, when the Senate was in control of Democrats, majority of the Trump's appointments were delayed significantly in terms of hearings, in terms of confirmations. This time, that's not going to happen. So expect Mr. Trump appointments to sail through with remarkable ease, and he will have control over his government rather sooner than later. But let's get back to that. To talk about this entire issue of the implication of Trump winning, what is the path for the future, I have great pleasure in welcoming our returning guest, Mr. Mohan Sonti, who doesn't need any introduction to our viewers. Mr. Mohan Sonti, welcome to the show.
Namaste, Vibhuti ji, and namaste to all the viewers.
Yeah, so wanted to begin with your thought on considering the fact that the left communists, the elite billionaires, the World Economic Forum, they were all so against Trump's presidency, Trump coming back to power, including European powers, because there is a whole lot of issues involved there. So let's talk about the Trump reincarnation and resurgence in 2024 election, and what impact and implication does it have for the rest of the world? So your opening thoughts on this.
All right. First of all, Trump, actually, the resurgence, it's amazing that he's only the second president in the history of America who had a break, and then he came back again. The last time, I think it happened sometime in 1800s. I forget, 1860s or 70s.
Yes.
So he's only the second president in the history of America to have come back after a break. And also, since 1950s, Eisenhower, Trump is the only other candidate who never had a political background. So these are amazing that somebody with no political background has also come back. I mean, there are a lot of firsts here, a lot of interesting things. But we need to go over the details on what really happened with Kamala ji and what went wrong.
People have commented in the past that you keep addressing Kamala ji, but not Trump ji. So just be careful about that part.
Yes, I mean, I just said Kamala ji. It's an Indian name, so I just use the word ji.
But then on a lighter vein, she is not Kamala ji. It is Kamala ji. So you have to make that correction as well. That she has completely changed her name, and I have no problem with that. But she's not Kamala. She's Kamala. Let's put it that way. So tell us about it. What were the reasons for her such a remarkable defeat?
So, see, the Kamala ji didn't have anything that she is bringing to the table, right? There are a few facts that we have to understand on how her political strategies worked and why they actually failed. So one of the key things that she brought in, basically, she kept saying that this is going to be the first woman president, and she's contesting for it. But again, that card is something that has already been played by Hillary Clinton. So it's a repetition of the same thing. And then, even though she is basically half Indian, which she rarely acknowledges, and half Caribbean, she decided to identify herself with the Black community. And this is very similar to what President Obama had done. So that card too has already been played. It's like playing the same cards over and over again. So she already played the idea of the women. That's already been played by Hillary Clinton. She played the card of Black, even though she really is half Caribbean and half Indian. Something she never acknowledges, probably because of political expediency, or it could be because of basically an identity crisis. Whatever be the reason, she never acknowledged it. The third card that she played was that the Trump is evil. And the problem with this card is that that also has been overplayed since 2016. It's been like almost 8 years, and people have heard that a million times. I mean, the newspapers are all over it. In fact, all the so-called mainstream media, the left liberal media, has exclusively focused on it. The previous contestants like Biden and Hillary Clinton, they're all focused on this. And the problem she has is that Trump already had a 4-year term. So all the media's predictions and the rhetoric, right, the fear-mongering rhetoric that's going to be the end of the world, end of the country, end of democracy, and all the fear-mongering clearly is not going to. I mean, that probably would have played some role in 2016, but he has already been there for 4 years, and the end of the world scenario, it looks like he didn't even go to any wars. There was a good economy. So basically, this didn't play out well either. So all these cards are basically used cards and failed cards that she has played. Other than that, she didn't bring anything new. As far as the policies go, we know that she has been switching the policies to the point that people really don't know what she really stands for anymore. The other thing that she played very often is that about taxing the rich. See, that card too, it was first told by Barack Obama back in 2008. And every term, they repeat the same thing, that I'm going to tax the rich. And despite the fact that even in 2024, 3/4 of all the billionaires, the net worth of the billionaires, 3/4, the people who hold 3/4 of that, they were supporting Democrats. So somehow the billionaires always support the Democrats, and they always talk about taxing the rich. That's been happening for like almost 15 years, or more than 15 years. So it is like Congress party's Garibi Hatao, right? They can keep saying it, but after 15, 20 years, you'll be like, really? I mean, that card has already been played. So basically, she didn't come up with any new cards. Otherwise, basically the threat to democracy and things like that. See, these have been played so many times that she didn't really come up with anything new here. All right. One additional few points that she had was this. I think if you know that Kamala ji was previously in primaries, she did not secure even one delegate, as far as I remember.
Right.
So she was technically the weakest candidate. The reason she could rise to this level, in my opinion, is because every other candidate was a serious candidate and they were really hopeful of becoming the president one day. So they don't want to go into battle for this season. They basically said, not this year, I'll go some other day. So I think her planets and stars have aligned very well that nobody else wanted to contest this election. And this is the highest I think she could have accomplished. And she can go down the history as somebody who has contested these elections as one of the presidential candidates. I think that is the reason she was here. So none of these are favorable to her. And this is the actual reason behind it. Of course, they're going to blame it on many things like sexism, racism, and all of that. But that is typical victimhood play. Yeah. But these are the real reasons, if we can look at it. This is the game plan that she had. There's nothing new at the table.
Absolutely correct. And I totally agree with you, because there another important part that you said, that no serious Democratic candidate was interested in this presidential cycle.
Yes.
Because it was a normal course to allow the vice president to contest after Biden dropping out. But Biden dropped out very late. That potentially hurt Kamala Harris's candidacy in terms of introducing herself to the public. But that also doesn't hold valid ground, in my opinion, because, Kamala Harris had no position. The more she spoke, the more confused she seemed. And because she was very weak on policy prescriptions, she had no agenda to talk about. But there was another one which I heard on another podcast where somebody said that mainstream media, the legacy media as it is called, they were pumping her up big time. But Trump completely befuddled them by going to and opening a completely new frontier of podcasts. I mean, Joe Rogan's podcast was watched by 30 million people. The mainstream media just lost it.
Yes.
Just totally lost it. On the contrary, Even Kamala Harris was laying down terms and conditions of her engagement of coming on that. But in that podcast, somebody said, very interestingly, regardless of whatever, this was a bad horse. This horse was not winning. This is very the analogy of the horse racing and saying that this horse was a bad horse is very telling. And I think I agree with that. That this horse was a bad horse, and only in a very strange circumstances that this horse was going to win a derby. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple things regarding what you mentioned about Biden dropping out late. I'm not sure if he actually just dropped out or if he was actually made to drop out.
Made to drop
See,
out. Yeah.
the issue with that is basically there is that shows some sort of an internal conflict, because Biden genuinely believed up until the last minute. In fact, even the day before he dropped out, he was actually campaigning. He honestly believed that he is going to be the next contestant. He got the highest number of delegates too, from Democratic side. Somehow Democrats thought he is the most fit person. So so that is one issue. Second is the mainstream media. There is a reason why they keep spreading the idea that every other news is basically a fake news and that need to be monitored and shut down, right? It's because they want, it's more like having a control over the propaganda in some sense. That is something that needs to be corrected by Trump administration. Otherwise, this is not going to go well in the future. It's not just about now, it's for the long-term things where you cannot have a propaganda system that actually tries to cancel everybody else. So yeah, that's the change they made. Yeah.
The other thought that is very important, considering that only yesterday, yesterday or Friday, the news broke that federal authorities have found evidence of Iranian plot to kill Trump. 2 people were caught. One is still on the loose. Now, this will become technically the 3rd potential attempt on Trump's life. Now, from today, he is not the president until January 20th, he takes oath.
Correct.
In between, there are certain procedures to be followed of certification by the electoral college, and varieties of things until January 6th. And then on 20th, he takes the oath. The important part is, what should Trump do in this interregnum? Should he be careful that no more life attempt happens on him? Because if the life attempt happens, and if, God forbid, if it succeeds, it throws out the entire thing out of the window. So what must Trump do in this time frame? Bunker down, work on your cabinet, work on your nominations, work on all the processes or your executive orders, and don't show up in the public. You have seen enough. Enough people have voted for you. Enough people have seen you. Stay indoors. And as we saw, the robots are guarding his Mar-a-Lago. Special patrols are on the water. So he has to be taking care of himself better. Take rest, because he will be active again very soon. Take rest. So that will be my advice. Your take on that?
So, so far we know that he already had 2 assassination attempts that were established. The third one, where one of the police chiefs thinks it is an assassination attempt, but others disagree and whatever. So at least 2 of them we know that has happened, and one of them was very clearly life-threatening. It is just a miracle that he escaped. So what I think is, today, if you look at Trump's policies, right, at least from my calculation, he actually threatens almost $2 trillion worth of all the lobbies and the deep state things. And in one of the previous shows, we went over the numbers for the military-industrial complex regarding the wars and things like that, right? So if you look at those things, he also has clear-cut policies wherein he wants to change the effect of the deep state and the lobbies by how he is going to revamp how the civil service personnel actually come in and how they function. So that is one. The second is about the Climate Change Act that the Democratic government has passed. That has a very serious impact on the growth, the economic growth, and many factors. So he is going to change that too as one of the priorities. The other one being the Ukraine wars and the Palestine war, right? The Israeli war. Basically, we know there is a very serious issue with that, with the Ukraine war, how they get the money, and Palestinians, where we covered in the previous session that almost out of 6,000 people, 2,200 people were civilians who attacked Israelis. And then suddenly we have protests in all the democratic and liberal areas, as if it is Palestine's right to somehow go and kill Israelis. So a lot of these things are going to change. So I think currently, a lot of people are very happy the elections are over and Trump has won the election. But many people don't realize he is not the president until January 20th. So if anything goes wrong from here to Jan 20th, then he is not the president and JD Vance is not going to be taking over, as because he's also at this point, they really are just elect.
Yes.
They're really not the president and vice president. So this, I think, is one of the most critical time between now and Jan 20th, where I think he has one of the highest threats. So he needs to be extraordinarily careful. And I really see no reason for him to come out and speak in public, because that is not needed. He can do all that he wants after Jan 20th until the swearing in, because that is when the fate of the country is going to change, right? All the policies and all the ideas that he has come up with, the reason people voted for him, will only start going into effect only after the Jan 20th swearing in. Right. So I think he needs to be very careful. In my opinion, he shouldn't even step out. In fact, if you think about it, right, the Biden actually never came out of his basement, and he got, just saying that theoretically he got the highest number of votes ever in the history of America somehow, even though nobody has ever seen him come out of the basement. I'm just saying Trump doesn't really have to come out. One additional thing that he kind of, you can say, could be threatening to another lobbies is regarding the drugs. We know about the Prop 47. I think it was very beautifully called as Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. But what it does is actually put drugs, it's putting the drugs into the market, and now it's widely available in California. This is the California Prop 47, right, with a very beautiful name. Yeah. So Trump is going to reverse all of these things and is going to get them under control. Also the illegal immigrants. So he has a lot of big plans, and that actually threatens a lot of lobbies and a lot of people in deep state. So I think it is very important that I believe he should not even come out right now until Jan 20th. Stay safe, and he can talk. I mean, this is a digital era. He can talk what he wants from a safe place.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with that, because this is, and he has been campaigning for the last 2 years very aggressively, going across the country, addressing thousands of people. So he has spoken enough in public. And Mr. Trump, or your advisors, if they're listening to this, and I'm sure you are taking this into account, this is the time to rest and recuperate. Along with reincarnation and resurgence to succeed, you need to use rest and recuperation as in these 2 months, charging up your battery, because you are not 45 years of age. You are, all said and done, 78, and it has to be taken into account. That said, rest and sleep are weapons. Use them. This is the time to use them. But I wanted to also talk about something very important, and that is everything related to this is important. One of the things that was, he was always talking about America, MAGA, Make America Great Again, emerging as a patriot, sticking to the laws and the Constitution, whereas he was a victim of serious lawfare. And that's why we are, friends who are watching it, why am I calling it reincarnation? Is not reincarnation in the traditional sense, but reincarnation that he emerged all of it. And now the stories are that Jack Smith and all cases by him are going to shut down, obviously because he's the president of the country. Besides, the element of impropriety or legal manipulations, he was not proved guilty anywhere. Just one case of United California, New York case that the Attorney General is trying to push forward on that. The New York attorney, she's trying to push through that, and she has been given a warning on that. Tell us, in terms of immigration, the impact and implication, what effort should he do with immigration? Because he made a very huge declaration that you will see the largest ever deportation. And he's a man of his words. How will he accomplish that? And to succeed, what will be his
deportation?
And to succeed, what must be his path forward be?
Yeah. So deportation on how he does it, this is not something new. I mean, they make it look like as if he's the first person to actually do all the deportations, mass deportations, and something, a big crisis is going to unfold. The truth is that every president has done that. And in fact, in the recent past, President Obama did one of the largest deportations, or so they have claimed. And this is not a claim coming from others. It's actually coming from the Democrats themselves, who say that Obama has done the largest deportations.
Right.
So it is not something new. So there is an established system for that. But they make it look like as if this is something brand new, and most people think that somehow this is something that only Trump is doing it. Now, is it going to be the largest deportation? It's probably because it was the largest illegal immigration as well. And in that sense, with the smallest, in fact, practically no deportations at all. That's what Biden administration did. Despite the Title 42 that we talked about in the past, where there were strict restrictions, despite that, this was the largest illegal immigration that we had in the history of America. So the deportation is going to be probably a little larger. But this is not a new concept. So let us not, let people know that this is something that all the other presidents have done it, and at least Democrats have bragged that Obama did the most in that era, at least in those few decades. So it is, there's nothing to actually make it into a big deal per se.
And you are right, because I remember seeing a video of Bill Clinton in his State of the Union address, talking about the cost of illegal immigration, how it is a burden on the society and they have to be deported, and we have to have laws to make sure that illegal people don't cross the border. Same statement, and they were in that in that address, State of the Union address, he was getting standing ovation from his own party, right?
Yes.
Whereas same statement made by Trump made him a bigot, made him an anti-immigrant. So what he should do, how he must begin the deportation plan, if you were to advise him, how would he start? Where would he start? Who would he start? Which will be the first million to get out?
So the biggest issue that he is going to have is, even though the immigration itself is a federal mandate, but somehow some of the states which have the sanctuary cities and all of that are technically, from my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, but from my understanding of how the law and constitution, those are illegal, as I understand. But how do they function? It is within the state boundaries. So I think states do have a substantial control over them. So it is going to be tough. I think he should start with the states that are more cooperative, which tend to be the red states, but also are of a priority are the border states. I think this is very important for the economy to grow and, take care of the law and order and things like that. So that's where I think he should start.
Yeah, I would say that Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Florida, these are the places where he must start. And I think he will have a great ally in New York City mayor, who a few days ago announced that the free food coupons are no longer available because we have no money. And he was the critic of Biden policy for having burdened his New York City so severely. So he would be the biggest collaborator, although he will be in conflict with his own governor. And a mayor, for making the statement against Biden on immigration, is under investigation by his own party. So I think there will be a very interesting shift here. But I think he will be very smart about it. Start deporting people who have criminal record. There are many of them. People with suspect categories, who people would be happy to know these people are gone. That category of people. But at the same time, I would suggest to him that regularize all H-1B immigrants who are here in this country. Everybody. I mean, majority of them are Indians, no doubt, 60, 70 or 80% of them. But regularize all H-1B category people, because they are unnecessarily living under H-4 for their spouses, their children who are born here. You regularize that entire thing and increase the number of legal migration from 1 million to 2, or whatever that number is. double it. See, this is a country which needs people, but the important part is to determine and announce a policy, just as corporates do. HR department will say, hey, we need these kind of people. So advertise for that, and you corporatize the entire immigration process, and you probably give the signal to the world that, okay, I need 250,000 plumbers all over the world. I'm ready to host you, because there are a lot of plumbers retiring in the country. So that would be a really smart thing to do, in my opinion. Now, the other thing which I wanted
just
to
want to
talk.
mention one thing. There is, see, the legal immigrants have always been, if you look at the statistics itself, they are really the highly productive members of the society.
Yes.
And they're coming for exactly that reason. So their productivity is really high. The issue with illegal immigrants is basically they are off the grid. So essentially, it is some sort of a slavery in our backyard.
Yes.
Because, see, all of these minimum wages and many of those things, essentially, it doesn't apply to them because they are technically not in the system.
Right.
So this is actually running some sort of a slavery in our backyard. So I think that is wrong. It's morally wrong too. Yes. It's not just the illegal immigrants should go, but it's also morally wrong to just bring them in this way and exploit them. Right. All right, and we should not be doing it in our country here. And legal immigrants, yes, the green card should also increase. These are the productive members of the society. If they really want people, bring them legally. It also keeps the system stable.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm all for it. Hey, listen, simple data, simple juxtaposition of situation. This country is 4 times larger, 3 times larger than India, Alaska and Hawaii included, and has 1/4 of population. It's a resource-rich country. It needs people. And to that end, we have to only make sure that you don't pump in 1 million cars on Long Island Expressway and you make it a parking lot instead of a smooth flow of traffic. I think that's what people are looking for. The other issue that I wanted to talk about, which emerges out of this election, is Trump was always, blamed for being hyper nationalistic, right? Make America great again. People are accusing him for being an isolationist, so to say. The Democrats have also talked him. He will become the most isolationist, tariff measures and all that. And on the other hand, India, Prime Minister Modi was blamed as a nationalist. So that brings a question about patriotism and globalization part of it. Is patriotism wrong thing? Is to love your country is the wrong thing? That is something that people need to openly debate about. Your thoughts on that?
So the thing is, in general, patriotism is a great thing, but it's also a double-edged sword because of some of the things that have happened in the West, and that has left a bad taste in many people's mind and their tongue. They're saying that it may not be great. For example, things that happened that Hitler did, as what he also called himself as nationalist. So there is some sort of a pushback from that concept. But in general, whether it is a community, society, country, people do well if they're really proud of their own community or their country. I mean, if people dislike their country and their nationality, obviously things are not going to progress. So patriotism in that sense is a great idea. I mean, in general, that is always helpful. But there are also things that we need to keep in mind, the negative aspects of it. And this is where I would say the difference between the reason they also point at India, but there are some stark differences between a dharmic idea and an Abrahamic idea. An Abrahamic idea tends to be black and white. It's a monochromatic idea. So you're a left wing or a right wing, conservative, liberal. Basically, it's all in binaries, right? So what happens with patriotism, as it happened in case of Hitler in the West, it is not just about how great we are. Like in many of the Abrahamic ideas, there's just not that I am great. It's also that the other person is evil. And that person must be changed or dominated. See, this is not the same. That is why when we have a Rashtravad in India, that is not same as the nationalism of the West in many ways, like what the Hitler said. Because in Rashtravad, our dharmic concept is we are great, we are good. And I feel proud about it. It has no bearing on what others are, right? But an Abrahamic idea, if you look at it, the idea of the faithful Heathen and Momin and Kafir, see, the idea is, it's not that I am great, the others are also evil and that need to be put down. That is what happened by Hitler, right? Somehow he decided he has to control, we have the ideal people. This is what people fear. If that part is kept in under the wraps, if we understand, I mean, it kept a lid on and we don't spiral into it, then other than that aspect, patriotism is a great thing to have. Some issues here, I would just want to mention one of the historical, I mean, some of the things that it'll be nice for viewers to know is people know about the flag code. Now, the flag code, basically, it came into existence in 1998. All right. And flag code is not, breaking the code is not punishable offense. But this is a code, nevertheless, you do it out of respect, which includes a lot of things in it. But one conspicuous thing that is missing in it is burning the flag. And how did that come about? So back in 1984, and at the Republican National Convention in Dallas, so a person called Johnson, he actually burned the flag. So that is where everything started. And Johnson is part of one of the communist parties here, or communist group community. There's a party here for communists. He was part of that. So it's essentially communists. He was a military person who served in many places, but he came back, joined the Communist Party. He burned the flag protesting against the Republicans at an RNC convention. See, the communists are basically leftists, right? So they started with that. So in 1989, the state government of Texas took it to the Supreme Court. So it's Texas versus Johnson. The Supreme Court declared that burning a flag is kind of a free speech. It's kind of an expression, so that should be allowed. So he cannot be imprisoned, he cannot be charged, which was the case until that point in 48 states. That kind of an action was considered to be like a punishable offense. So that changed in 1989. Immediately, what the party did was, I think it was Ronald Reagan at that time, right? Oh, no, sorry, George W. Bush. No, is it Ronald Reagan? I forget. So 1980.
Reagan was there.
Reagan. So immediately what they did was they passed a law called the Flag Protection.
I think it was George Bush Senior.
George Bush Senior, right? 1989.
Yeah.
Correct. So 1989, yeah. So they passed
George Bush Senior lost the re-election to Bill Clinton in 92. So
92, correct. So it was George Bush Senior in 1989. They passed a law called the Flag Protection Act. It was passed in the Congress. Very important because a lot of people, common people, never liked that. Even the Supreme Court gave the judgment. So when this was passed in 1990, this became they did it again in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol or something. They burnt it again, a few more people. So now this became the federal United States versus Eichmann, was taken to the same Supreme Court with the same set of judges. So they said the previous judgment still holds true, and therefore it was basically, they said it is valid and it's I mean, from First Amendment, unless we clarify that with one of the amendments, this, as per the First Amendment free speech, they should be able to burn the flags, right? Then that is when you got the flag code in 1998, which is merely suggestive in a sense, like it's respectful to do it, but there are no charges or criminal charges for not following it. So this is the background of how this happened and how the leftists slowly brought this idea in, right? To me, that's a disgrace. I mean, burning the flag, if you really don't, I mean, this is a form of expression. I get it from what the Supreme Court said, and in Congress, it didn't pass, the bill didn't pass. But in general, a dislike towards the country, it just translates. I mean, this is a smaller issue, but in future, what happened was in recent times, there are people, the Palestinians, having even the civilians and the militia going to Israel, killing people, and now they stand in America and they say death to America. Now, to me, that is, even if it is not an outright treason, but it must be a very serious criminal offense, because if you seriously dislike the country, what the idea behind death to America is, there are people living here, it is kind of a threat to everybody. See, the freedom of speech ends at a point where you start threatening someone, right? All the freedom of speech ends there. You cannot threaten anybody. It's not just the president of America. You cannot threaten anybody, right? Now, when you say death to America, or you have a very bad opinion, you want the destruction of America, then that is kind of threatening collectively a lot of people in America. So to me, that should not be coming under freedom of speech. I dislike something with the government, absolutely fine, right? So this is the issue. What Trump was trying to do is he wants to create, for example, National Garden of America, American Heroes. This was one of the last executive order he passed back in 2020. And what Biden did was, one of his first act was to actually scrape this out. So in that sense, patriotism is, what I'm saying is, people need to be proud of their country. And the Trump's idea of, unless you're proud of your country, the country is not going to make much progress. Otherwise, we are constantly in some sort of a battle. It may not be a civil war per se, but this is kind of an intellectual civil war, right? Wherein you keep on thinking bad about the country, which is not a good idea. And I think in that sense, Trump is doing the right thing. He just need to be careful about not crossing the line over. He should make sure the people who are patriotic do not cross the line over and assume that somebody else is evil that needs to be suppressed.
That's right.
This is a very good idea.
That's a good point, that it is very easy to cross the line. In your enthusiasm, you cannot cross the line. And that's one of the classic script. Whoever was writing for Kamala Democrats and against Modi, Hitler-like, dictator-like,
fascist. Yeah, they kept repeating that.
They kept repeating the same script against Modi, against Trump, just because they were loving their country and they said, my country first.
And none of these people actually had that attitude. None of them ever had this idea of suppressing others or doing anything bad to others. Their idea for both Trump and Modi ji as well. I mean, in Dharmic culture, we never had that anyway. But even for Trump, it was very clear. It is my people, my country. That's it.
That's it.
The rest of it is made up stories by Democrats. And we have seen 4 years of Trump. It's not like we have not seen him.
Correct. And there was no sign of any dictatorship or anything. But, this
the world didn't come to an end. If you haven't noticed it.
This brings me to another point, is that while Modi ji has been remarkably careful with his choice of words, Trump is not.
He's not a politician.
He's not a politician. And he ends up making his own garden look wild at times. And many of his supporters will have to stand up to defend him. For example, in the Sean Hannity interview, when he asked the question, will you ever be a dictator? And I said, geez, he is going to fall for that trap. And I was telling somebody sitting with me that all that he needs to say, I don't have to be a dictator. All I have is, I already have the instrument of executive order to do what I want. And every Democrat, every Republican has done it in the past. But the fact that he said that I will be dictator for day one, actually he was saying that I will issue executive orders, right?
Yes.
But the fact that he said, I will be dictator for day one, the entire media, the Democratic Party played it like crazy, that he will be a dictator. So I suspect, I would simply request Mr. Trump, don't make statements like that, because you make your supporters' life tougher, because we have to now explain, in addition to yourself, that I didn't mean that.
Actually, I have an experience with my friends too in the past. They said, just colloquially, we're just talking with friends. They said, all that we want Trump to do is do what he said he is going to do, and he's doing a great job. Just don't talk.
It reminds me of a Western movie, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And in one of the sequences, the guy says, when you want to shoot, don't talk. So I think that applies to Mr. Trump very well here. Just go on doing what you have promised to do. You have the mandate, you have the Senate. Hopefully you will have the House, whether you have it or not. You can accomplish a lot more. Everything that you have said is achievable. So that's a very important part. Now, I wanted to come to one very significant comment here. And that is, I have said it in my shows here, that American democracy has become a non-exportable democracy, in my opinion. Because first of all, this is a unique model of electoral college and popular vote. And this is the first ever time in 20 years that a Republican has won the popular mandate as well, popular vote, and with significant difference. And it is a conversation today, is happening all over. Where are the Biden 14 million votes? Right? People are asking that. Because the vote share is, voting percentage has remained the same, 65 million. And that was Biden more popular than Obama? So what happened in 2020? I think there will be an investigation on that. History will come up, researchers will talk about where are those 14 million votes, right? So whether they were all AI generated votes, nobody knows. You can create images of another kind. But what electoral reform America needs to make it more trustworthy and transparent? And I will preempt it by saying that voter ID is a critical issue in America. The whole world is laughing at us that what kind of a system you have. And I blame Democrats for that 100% because they have been the champions of voter rights and voter integrity. They use that word rather in a very facile way. Your thoughts on that?
So for democracy to work, we require two fundamental things, right? In the trust itself. For trust in democracy, you need two things. Number one is the secrecy of the ballot. That my vote is secret, only I know about it. The second most important thing is the free will. That people are voting the way they want to vote. And they're not being threatened, or they're not under any kind of a coercion or anything like that. So these are the two key components. We all can agree that secrecy and free will are the two key components. So there was this bipartisan report, U.S. Election Assistance Commission. It's a government website. So there's a bipartisan report on a government website. It says Report of the Commission on Federal Election Reform, September 2005. So these are the fundamental recommendations. The idea with not checking the voter ID, which happens in almost 13 to 14 states, there's absolutely no check at all. It defies the idea of secret. It defies basically you don't know who is voting anymore, right? Because you don't. The secrecy is in this case beyond. You don't even know the person who is voting. You've already defied that. It's no more the citizens. The second one was about the mail-in ballots. The mail-in ballots. The issue is, it is not so much about whether we can map it. Even in the future, we map it with the citizenship and all of that. We don't know if it is a free will. Because in a family, let us say there are high passions and there are so many people who are all of one party. We don't know how it plays on the other people who may not really agree with the political views, right? And we don't know if somebody has even really voted, or one of the family members put a check mark on all of them and mailed it. What I'm saying is the idea of the free will cannot be guaranteed. In fact, in a court, unless the person stands, even if you sign and have the attestation, notaries and everything, for the final judgment, typically in courts, the judge wants to look at the person and say, did you do this out of free will? She will read it, or he or she will read it out, whatever the thing, and he'll say, did you sign it? And is it out of free will? Unless you say yes, physically present there, typically the judgment is not given. It is very common. So in this case, we don't know the free will. We don't know who actually sent it. And the secrecy part is completely compromised when, and of course, the integrity is completely compromised when the voter ID is not checked. Right? Now, this was actually recommended back in 2005. All that they have to do is implement all these recommendations. The mail-in ballots for exceptions, I can understand. But it cannot be generally open for everyone. Like some states already have a mail-in ballot for everyone, right? That actually compromises that. Now, some of the examples here is this time Kamalaji's, if you look at all the states that she won.
Kamalaji,
yes. All the states that she has won. It is interesting that with an exception of New Hampshire, where only a non-photo ID is required, she hasn't won a single state where the photo ID is required.
Right.
So things like these does not bring in the confidence, because there are issues on how come they haven't won any state, unless the Democrats, the strongly held Democratic states, are sliding down to the point that they don't want to do a voter check. What is interesting is even the most educated people, right? The political views are often, they mirror something like the religious views. People are very passionate about it. So they have great logic and they talk great things. But when it comes to something so fundamental, the Democrats could actually convince a large number of their followers that even if I don't check the voter ID, things are fair. I don't know how they pull that magic on people, that even if I don't check who voted, things must be fair because everybody is honest and they're going to do the right thing. They somehow not only said it, they convinced even the people who are highly educated and somehow they're convinced that I don't need to check the voter ID. Have any one of them gone to an office without scanning a badge? Right? Something as simple as that. They will check a voter ID, or they'll check a identity, right? Photo ID. In fact, you go to a pharmacy, they want to check an ID. Something so fundamental, they somehow were convinced that an entire election can be run without checking who is voting. So that is where the question of integrity comes in. The other aspect is, if you look at the numbers itself, if you see the Democrats over the last, since 2012 or so, they got 66 million in 2012, 66 and 16. There was 70 million in 2008. There were 4 million more. And then it came down to 66 million in 2012, 66 in 2016. It went up to 81 million in 2020 and back to 70. So there is a sudden surge of 15 million votes. 15 million. Now, the Republican side, it was 60, 61, 63 in those 3 years. But in 2020, Trump got 74. In 2024, he again got 74. Nothing changed. He got the same votes that he got before. And you can see the same thing in 2012 and 16. The Democrats got 66 million, 66 million. Typically, those numbers don't change much. Okay, Barack Obama, 2008, there was a lot of people wanted to be a first black president and things like that. So it went up by 4 million. That's about it. But somehow for Biden, who has never stepped out to do any kind of campaign, at the same time, Trump, even almost the night before the elections, he was pulling in crowds over 50,000 people, right? Biden got 15 million more votes. From 66, it went all the way to 81 million. So some of these things they do look suspicious. I'm not saying there was a fraud. All that I'm saying is there is a statistical anomaly. And when statistical anomalies happen, we need to understand why it happened rather than wash it away as, well, there's mail-in ballots. If there were mail-in ballots, what happened now? There are still, in fact, there are more mail-in ballots now, right? Some states have openly declared it's mail-in ballots.
Yes.
So things like this, and not to forget, again, the first women president kind of a rhetoric, a lot of people will want to use it if they really wanted to do mail-in ballots. So I would say to bring back the confidence in election, they have to implement this 2005, the Commission of Federal Election Reform, that report. Like I said, the secrecy, the integrity is the voter ID check, and then the free will. So mail-in ballots is a problem, and not checking voter ID is a problem. Something which is a bipartisan report. Everybody agrees. The whole world over, there is nobody in this world who will look at it and say, you don't check your voter ID. And you go to airport, you go to office, they will check your ID. So it is
you talked about pharmaceutical, airport, and buildings. Even when I go to buy a NyQuil, even that you have to, the clerk has to come and certify that, yes, okay, you are not 16 or 18 or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. Everywhere. The point is, somehow these are educated people. In Democrats, there are highly educated people. And just like religious beliefs, they suddenly act like a 5-year-old. And somehow they were convinced that even if you don't check your voter ID, things must be fair. I don't know how people can just suddenly get convinced that I don't need to check anything and things must be fair. Just because I didn't find anyone. I mean, there were no cameras in the store and nobody was guarding it. And you say somebody is going to steal it. They said, nope, there was no proof of it. I haven't seen a report.
And remove the camera too.
if there's going to be stealing, if there is nobody guarding it, you must assume that people who are going to cheat will cheat. It's not like there is a group of all honest people, right? Because people are people anywhere in the world. They're exactly the same, right? You go to any corner of the world, any country, it's exactly the same set of people, same ideas, right? Because we all are humans. So to convince such a large population that you don't need a voter ID check by itself it's pretty amazing. I don't know what's going on and how they could convince them.
No, listen, there is a saying goes that when somebody does overdoes the bhakti part or devotion part, that means the intent is suspicious. So in this particular case, I had my suspicions when the Democrats were talking about voter integrity, election integrity, no ID required, anybody can vote. That was dangerous because there are many people who are not qualified to vote because there are no citizenship. and mail-in is a trouble. I'm perfectly fine with early voting. That makes a lot of sense because at least a person goes in person and has to sign off
Yes.
and has to vote. It makes life easier to that extent that people are working Monday through Friday. So it is, it is difficult. So on one particular day, on election day, you can have long lines, and that can cause inconvenience. So early voting, I'm okay with. In-person voting, I'm okay with. But this mail-in, you can't even verify. And there was a problem here.
And the
Now
free
what they
will.
do, in the mail-in, what they do is, unlike they follow the same principle as if they do for April 15 tax filing, that your tax filing has to be postmarked
Yeah.
for April 15th, regardless of when it reaches IRS, doesn't matter. You can't do that for election.
See, there are quite a few issues. Even if you fix all of them, the idea of free will is still lost, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know who did that at home.
Yeah.
I'm not saying in a fraudulent way. All that I'm saying is in a family, for example, you don't know if somebody is coerced into it or somebody just took the ballot. I'm pretty sure no family is going to report it and send the family member to prison.
Right.
But I'm just saying it can be done. The idea of the free will is lost, and you really don't know who voted anymore.
So those if the father of a family of 5 sends a vote to one person, one party, the other people would not even know, and it will remain a legit vote.
It could still be a legitimate vote.
Yeah.
See, there are quite a few issues with the mail-in ballot. And again, the no voter ID check is no brainer. I mean, like I said, it's a miracle on how people just got convinced that I don't need to check anything in it. Everybody is honest people.
Yeah.
Everything is honesty. See, there is a problem there. But other than that, even the mail-in ballots has an issue. And these are the recommendations from 2005, like I said, the Federal Commission report. And there's a bipartisan report. If they simply implement these things, and I think Trump administration should implement this first. This is the most important thing for all the future democratic elections.
Yes, and Kamala Harris's statement was rather pathetic when she said, "Oh, people in rural areas don't have access to photocopying machine, or they don't have the opportunity to go and they don't have money to make the photocopy." That was so bizarre that I said, "What are you actually drinking, Kamala Harris? I do not know."
See, the laws are passed in a way that once they are passed, the more and more people become aware and you add more people into it. It's not like because nobody knows and therefore let me just not pass the law. I mean, that is completely meaningless, right?
Yeah.
So if they pass the law, it is very easy. America has the technology to add all the people.
Absolutely.
So
last thing of this exciting outcome of the US election, impact and implication for India. Prime Minister Modi was the first one to talk, and Trump and they had a very good conversation, as the report said. Go ahead.
So I think we had covered specifically about Trump versus Harris and what's in it for India. We have done one show before.
Yes.
The thing is, since then too, right? Trump, he always refers to Modi ji as a very good friend. And if you have seen the tweets of Modi ji as well, they spoke, and I think I see a very good relationship that can really build between the Indo-US partnership. And also the issues that we had in the past, like the Biden administration, the things that are happening in Bangladesh, there are serious issues. And I think that is something which can really potentially be solved. Because one of the suspicions that a lot of people have is that America had a role to play in the Bangladesh coup, and they think America, I mean, it's a little hard to believe that Canada would do anything on its own free will, right? That is, sometimes Canada is also considered almost like the 51st state. It's an extension of America. So all the Khalistani other issues that are happening must happen with some sort of nod from America, is a belief. Some people suspect that there must be, at least if not a direct support, there must be a nod from America. And these are the issues from the Biden administration. And people are very hopeful that because Trump has mentioned Bangladesh genocide, the support for the Hindus, and the relationship with Modi ji, when he mentioned all of these things and the terrorism not emanating from its soil, which is basically the Khalistanis who have actually are threatening to blow up the planes, somehow it's considered free speech, and I don't know how. So all these things seems very hopeful, and I think we're looking forward for a great relationship. for the Indo-US partnership. It's great for the Indian diaspora as well. So everybody is very hopeful. Oh, one important thing is this is the first time, as I understand from the polls that I have seen, typically Indians vote over 90% to Democrats. This is the first time I heard that over 50% of Indians voted for Trump.
Right.
That
Actually,
is
there was a comment in Wall Street
and,
Journal as well. There was a comment in Wall Street Journal as well. Nobody has that data as yet, the raw data. But the impressions are that
this is from Access Polls, actually. From Access Poll that was done. It actually, one of the videos is there in the FIDS group, the Foundation for India and Indian Diaspora Studies.
Yeah.
There was an interview in that they had these details. So
yeah,
it's pretty interesting.
That's very true. Because remember one thing. I mean, we have talked about it very vocally here. The Indian Americans had to be aware of this fact that everything anti-Hindu, anti-India, they were all done in Democrat-run states, and California was the leader in it. California, Washington, these two states,
Yes,
Western states, were leadership role virtually in trying to malign all things India and Hindu.
yes.
And I think the constant reference to that why are Indians voting, vote for not Kamala name, enamored by Kamala name, but go by the policies as to who is actually good for you. So in that sense, I personally do see a great future, because not only for any reason, I mean, if Rahul Gandhi were the prime minister, I don't know how it would have happened. Trump would not even have met him. But there is a very interesting thing. Next year, the next year Quad meeting is happening in India. Because this time, at Biden's request, the Quad meeting, which was scheduled for India, was held here to keep the promises that the last man standing or the last term of President Biden. So Modi, that's the reason why Modi came. He didn't come for United Nations. He came for the Quad meeting to meet with Mr. Biden and close the matter. And India has to host. So most likely Trump will have to go to India. And that could become a very interesting visit if coordinated and planned well. That could be the very first term. I think there will be a first ever time any American president has gone to India in the very first term, very first year, not term, very first year. Obama and Biden, they all went to the tail end of their process. This would be interesting. So thank you, Mohanji. It was great talking to you, and your insights are remarkably prescient and very hard and truthfully telling things. Thank you very much. Viewers, please like, subscribe, and support our channel. Thank you very much. As I always say, Satyameva Jayate, for truth to triumph, we have to stand up for it. Thank you very much for watching.
Namaste.
Namaste.